So, another insider asks the question as we enter spring football: who pops at cornerback? This has arguably more answers or potential answers, I should say, than all the guys I even listed along the defensive front. And by the way, I don't think I even listed every single defensive lineman. I think pretty sure I got close to most of them, but those are the ones that have kind of popped the most to me, or whose film I liked over the last couple of classes. But when you talk about this secondary, I can't remember a time. Certainly not while I've been hosting the show, but even going back to, as a kid, I didn't track it as closely when I was growing up as an Oregon fan. But I don't know the last time Oregon lost their top 6 defensive backs. I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot of opportunity, is what that is. Like that line in The Big Short, when Jared Bennett's making the pitch to Mark Baum, he says, "And that, you're too close, is an opportunity," which turns out it was. Well, turns out this is a great opportunity as well. So some of this boils down to Jahlil Florence, because there's a very real world where he's kind of the pop player in the secondary who wasn't an impact guy a season ago. Now, this last year was due to injury, of course, because he wasn't healthy and he looked like maybe, he was sending out some cryptic tweets, and we were wondering, well, is he going to come back for 2025 or for 2024? Or is he, he tweeted out one time, "Business is business." And I thought, so is he hitting the portal? Is he leaving? No, looks like he's coming back. And if he's fully healthy, that's a guy who played on Dan Lanning's defense as a true freshman, which is a difficult thing to do. It's hard to play on either side of the ball when you have as much talent as Oregon's had on the roster the last several years as a true freshman. But the guys who have been able to do it, they've all shown themselves to be really good. Mateo played as a true freshman. Josh Connerly played as a true freshman. Jahlil Florence was one of those guys. So he was Oregon's number 2 corner behind the late Kyrie Jackson. Those were the 2 outside guys when they were fully healthy in 2023. And unfortunately, they weren't throughout the course of the year, and that hurt him against Washington. But, coming off an injury, there are always question marks. I cannot Sharpie in anyone in Oregon secondary except Dylan Thieneman. The Purdue transfer, I don't think there's any way, barring an injury, he's not a starter. That's the only guy. This was consistently a 6-man DB rotation. Their base personnel is 5, right? That's the defense that Lanning ran with Kirby Smart at Georgia, and they've brought that over to Oregon, he and Tosh Lupoy. So 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. That's your base personnel. 2 corners, 2 safeties, and a nickel. Florence has not played a ton of nickel in his career. He's typically been that outside guy. So I wonder, could it be him and Theron Johnson, the Northwestern transfer? Is he sliding into nickel? He's built a lot like Brandon Johnson, the Duke transfer, who was Oregon's starting nickel last year, and I thought did a good job. And then who would that leave on the other outside spot? And that's where it gets interesting. So let's just suppose for a moment, which again I don't think is a lock, but for the sake of argument, let's say Jahlil Florence is one of your starting corners. You then have the opportunity for any number of guys from past classes or this true freshman class to be on the field and have a big role. And maybe this will be, more rotational than it has been in previous seasons because of the depth they have. And, that's something that you'll probably figure out more during spring football. But candidates that could be a part of that defensive secondary come this fall. Sione Laulea, still there. Great length, 6'3", really good athlete. Had the pick against Illinois. Granted, game was kind of over, but Illinois still had their starters in the game. So you never know. Dalen Austin, certainly we have to see what happens with his legal situation off the field to know if he's going to be eligible to play. Roderick Pleasant, who has got insane speed, was one of the singular fastest people, like top 3 to 5 in the entire recruiting class in 2023. He's played sparingly so far. I don't know. I mean, Nico Reed was a starting outside corner this past year for Oregon at times, and I thought Nico Reed was fantastic. I mean, his growth from 2023 to 2024 was just huge. But is Roderick Pleasant someone who, is on as someone on the smaller side, is someone they see as a nickel, or are they okay putting him on the outside? I don't know, but he'd have a chance. Ife Obadegwu, really highly rated corner from last year's class. So too is Dakota Fields. Notice I haven't even mentioned the 2025 recruiting class yet, which is the best defensive back recruiting haul in the history of Oregon football. It got Chris Hampton, the safeties coach and co-defensive coordinator. It got him 24/7 Sports Recruiter of the Year. So does Trey McNutt? And the question originally was who pops at cornerback. So a guy like McNutt at safety, maybe not, but Naeem Offord, Brian Smith, our Locked On recruiting guy and host of Locked On the Portal here at the network. He has been adamant, which he rarely is, about anyone on either side of the ball, that this guy's too good to not play as a true freshman in some capacity. Where is that for Naeem Offord? Does he figure out how to play nickel, or is he going to play outside corner? There are so many permutations. It's like a make your own sandwich sort of spot. You could wind up with so many different combinations at the end of the line, because you can start with different types of bread. I personally am a wheat bread kind of guy, but maybe you have to start with Italian because they're out of wheat bread. Jahlil Florence, gets dinged up early in the season, and suddenly you got to showcase the depth. Well, there should be plenty of depth. There's not an outrageous amount of experience, but the physical traits and talent, it's all in there. So I think across the board, the secondary, as much as I love talking about that defensive line battle, and I think it's going to be legitimately fascinating to watch, I think the secondary in spring football and the cornerback position, there are so many ways that it could go. So many. I have not listed every potential cornerback for the Ducks. Those are just some of the guys who have stood out to me from this past recruiting class or the 2023 or 24 cycles as well. Lalea's seen the defense for a year, so maybe that gives him a bit of an advantage, and so is Ife Obadegwu as well. Dakota Fields, talented guy, like just a lot of options, and we don't really know. We just don't really know, and I think this too deep for the secondary across the board, but specifically at corner, a lot of different options, a lot of different choices, but a lot of really good options, and that's why you recruit. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.